Agus agus bhhain buachta gach leis néireacht teachtas tróna leis ceisio hógáil. And the controversy in relation to the horse meat in food that has been labelled as beef is a very, very serious controversy and rumbles on. And last weekend there was a very serious development when horse meat was labelled as beef for export out of this country, and where it would appear that it was expected that this would not be noticed because it was put in, I think it was Czech. And I would like to ask the Minister, or put it to the Minister, that the time is overdue now to get to the bottom of this whole controversy. And this controversy that seems to be getting wider and wider all the time. And that to do so, that an independent investigation, totally independent of the Minister and his department, should be put in place. And let's be honest about it, there are more and more issues that need clarification. At the beginning, the Minister seemed to give very clear, unequivocal statements that this issue had nothing to do with the production or the slaughtering of horse meat in Ireland. Well, now we know it does have, maybe not in the particular products in question, but it does have in the generality of this issue, of the sourcing across Europe, of horse meat, of mislabelling and so on. And I believe that it is time for the Minister and his department to stand back and allow an independent investigation get to the bottom of this whole issue of horse meat. And there are a lot of issues that need clarification. The first one is the one that I tried to get clarification from the Minister on parliamentary questions. And that is, what complaints were made to your department and when were they made in relation to the identification and the slaughtering of horses that were going into the food chain? What controls were in place? Were there complaints made? When were they made? What action was taken on foot of those complaints? And what was found out in any subsequent investigations?
No, may the one folk.
I think it's very important too that we find out why were the DNA samples? Was that taken on foot of an investigation? The next question that I think has been very puzzling to those of us who understand why the FSAI answered to the Minister of Health and not to the Minister of Agriculture is, why have you been the lead minister in relation to something that initially and fundamentally relates to the FSAI, when for very good reasons FSAI answers to the Minister of Health so that there wouldn't be an issue of what they call capture in relation to investigations into issues of food quality and of food safety. I think it's also important that we'd have an independent investigation into the whole issue of the supervision of the imports of meat into the country and in relation to the whole issue of labelling. So there are a whole lot of issues we need independently investigated to get to the bottom of what's gone wrong here, to restore the credibility of the beef industry in this country, to restore the credibility of the processed food industry in this country, and to ensure that whatever we put on the market is what it says literally on the package, whether that is horse meat leaving the country or whether it's processed foods. And until we get this independent investigation, it would appear that this crisis will just rumble on from crisis to crisis.
Margaret, Tara, 4 minutes for initial reply.
Yeah, I might need a little bit more than that, Ken Corley, and if so, I can come back to it. But the Deputy will have a written response from me that he can refer to anyway. I agree with him in the outcome that he's looking for, which is to restore credibility and confidence to an industry that has been damaged over the last 6 weeks by what has happened. And that is why we are so focused on actually getting the answers that you're looking for. And I believe we do have the independence on the current inquiries to do that. That's why the Guards are involved. And they are independent, just like the Food Safety Authority of Ireland is also independent. But the idea that we would actually stop the investigation that has been ongoing for 6 weeks now and put some new so-called independent body in charge to start again, to my mind, is crazy thinking, to be honest. As regards why I, as a minister, have taken the lead in this, I, like other ministers in the European Union that are responsible for their food industries, have taken on responsibility to show initiative, to respond with policy changes and responses at a domestic level, as well as looking at the use of DNA testing, which we have now done, working with the Food Safety Authority of Ireland independently, who have put a new protocol for DNA testing in place now in Ireland with the food industry to mainstream DNA testing into the food industry. In relation to the issue of equine identification and passports, as I said when we previously discussed this issue, and by the way, in case there's any doubt that I haven't been answering questions on this, we spent over 4 hours questioning within the committee. And for all of that time, actually, the Deputy wasn't present. He was for a lot of it. But any questions you have, Deputy, any questions you have on this issue, I will answer them. If you want to ask me those questions privately, I'll brief you privately. If you want to ask me those questions on the record, we'll do them in the House. If you want to ask me those questions in committee, we'll do it there. We have nothing to hide here. This industry needs to be transparent. That is why the investigation, as it has been ongoing, which started off as a specific investigation on one company, when there was a test result by the Food Safety Authority of Ireland on the 15th of January, and we started the investigation that morning on Silvercrest. What started off as one company having a specific problem with a specific burger that we were determined to get to the bottom of in terms of how it happened, has now blown up into a European-wide problem. And Ireland has taken the lead because there is political involvement from a minister, which is needed. Ireland has taken the lead in setting up a meeting initially with the Commissioner, with the 7 or 8 states who were involved at the time. There has subsequently been many more. We got an initial response from the Commissioner to actually introduce an initiative of an EU-wide DNA testing programme, initially for a month and for an extension of 2 months after that, of a phenylbutazone testing programme within equine abattoirs across the European Union so that we can establish the extent of the problem at a European level. In fact, this goes beyond the European Union, as we've seen now with big multinationals like Nestle involved. So, the point I'm making, Deputy, is your calls for an independent inquiry, in my view, don't make sense on a number of levels because, first of all, this is an independent inquiry. We have a special investigations unit which is independent within my department. They're working with the Food Safety Authority, who are also independent, and they're working with the Gardaí, who surely you would accept are entirely independent. I then have to give the political leadership, because not only do we need a thorough investigation in terms of how this happened from an Irish perspective, and indeed to contribute to a European-wide investigation which is now being led by Europol, which again was an initiative that I was involved in, to try and establish what has happened at a European level so that we can secure prosecutions. But we also need a policy response as the investigation continues to actually reassure consumers that we are taking actions and learning lessons from what happened here. And we are doing all of that. And Ireland is giving leadership at a European level on doing that, and that has been acknowledged at a European level, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you, Minister.
Because the food sector is more important to Ireland than it is to any other country in the European Union. In many ways, it can be compared to the automobile industry in Germany. The food sector is hugely important to this state, and I will protect the reputation of this industry, but I will leave no stone unturned and no reputation untarnished, if necessary, to get to the bottom of what happened and who was responsible for that.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Ó Cuív has 2 minutes for a supplementary statement.
First of all, as the Minister knows, I believe that nothing should be done that will in any way interfere with An Garda Síochána carrying out its investigation. The second thing, yes, you did eventually take it up in Europe. I had to do a fair bit of prodding on you to get you to do it, but fair play to you, eventually responded and you raised the issue in Europe. Now, as I pointed out to you previously, As I pointed out to you previously, the reason that the FSAI answers to the Minister of Health is to ensure that agencies not connected with the department investigate food safety issues. And that is the reason that it doesn't answer to the Minister of Agriculture, and it's for a very good and valid reason, and one obviously this government have agreed with because they left the structure that way. Now, in fact, I've asked time and again a whole lot of questions that relate to the behaviour, control and supervision of the department. You say this started with one factory. Immediately this became into the public domain. There were people telling me that this was a much wider issue, that there was a whole issue in relation to the control of the slaughter of horses in this country and what's happening to the horsemeat. I didn't know whether it was true or not, but I did know it should have been investigated. And of course we find out last weekend that there's a huge scandal in relation to the processing of horsemeat within this state. Now the question is, the control of this rests with the Department of Agriculture. And what are you telling me? That the Department of Agriculture is independently investigating the Department of Agriculture's control, supervision of meat coming in, of the slaughter of horses, of the packaging of the product and the export of the product. What we need is, outside of the agencies who are meant to be policing all of this, i.e. the FSAI, i.e. the Department of Agriculture, we need somebody independent of all of those, independent of the system, to investigate all of this, to look at the controls, to look at the supervision, to look what's the response to complaints, and you never answer this question, the number of complaints that went in relation to the slaughter of horsemeat, what you did about it, and when they came in, and all the other relevant details. Because despite trying to say it wasn't relevant to the issue, last weekend this became absolutely central.
Thank you,
to the
Deputy.
whole issue.
And the Minister to conclude further 2 minutes.
Yeah, Deputy Ó Cuív keeps saying that I haven't answered certain questions. I have answered the question that you... No, would you just listen to me for a second? I have answered that question. There was, and I actually have produced an information note for anybody who wants it, and I'll send it to you this evening, as to what we have done in the last 12 months in relation to the issue of equine identification, in relation to passports, in relation to linking those passports with microchips, in relation to increased supervision within equine slaughtering facilities, in relation to actually taking over the responsibility from local authorities in certain equine slaughtering facilities in Ireland. There aren't that many of them left now. We have done a lot in that area, Deputy, and I will happily give you the detail on that. But in relation to the independence of the inquiry, first of all, right, my department is involved in working on contract or under contract for the Food Safety Authority to actually ensure that we have an effective food safety system in this country, and we do have a very effective food safety system. My department takes 30,000 samples a year of meat from all sorts of places and tests it from a food safety point of view for everything from E. coli to chemical content to bacteria and all of the other standard accepted food safety tests. And we work with the Food Safety Authority to do that, to reassure people that the food they're eating is safe. What we have not done in the past, and what the Food Safety Authority have only done to a limited extent, and what no other country has been doing, is been using DNA testing to actually to test that food is what it says it is. And it is because of that testing in Ireland that we uncovered this issue, which has subsequently become a huge European and arguably global issue since then. And so the idea that we are somehow compromised by examining and improving the way in which our food safety systems work, the testing mechanisms that we use and how we use them, of course we need to be scrutinised by deputies like yourselves, and we are being scrutinised. But the idea that we are not the appropriate authority to actually look at the problem areas, establish if there are problem areas, try and respond and put new systems in place, working with the sector, because the primary responsibility actually is with food service operators in relation to food safety, but it's up to us to put the checks in place to make sure that we hold them to account. And we do that. And we do that probably better than any other country in the European Union. And if you look at, for example, the tests that we take in terms of that we make and the inspections that we make within the food processing sector in Ireland, we have double the required number of tests that the European Union requires us to have in terms of inspections. Double. And we will continue to actually increase those numbers if necessary. And we are now in the process of mainstreaming DNA testing into that system.
Thank you, Minister.
And we will be the first country in the European Union to do so. So I strongly defend how we have responded to this. It has grown, and there have been new scandals that have broken as part of the overall scandal. And yes, that has been frustrating for all of us. But we will continue to try and get to the bottom of what has happened and build a complete picture in terms of Ireland's role in this. And we are not too far away from doing that, Deputy.
Thank you, Minister.
So I look forward to being able to outline the detail of that when it's done.